show, as we said it was going to be. Hugh and I have missed you, and we're back now. And I think just to give a bit of context, and Hugh, you can back this up. We started doing our sports stuff over the course of the last month, and this week we both were talking about certain things that we wanted to bring to the table that weren't sport related. We've had a bit of a reassessment on what we're doing. Would you say that's an accurate representation of where we're at right now?
I would say, yeah. What was what we said before? Was it a rebirth?
It was a rebirth. Yes,
it's a rebirth. We're divas. We want to talk about it all. Our first instinct was we have voices. We want that to get out into the sphere, into the interwebs. And upon doing that, we discovered that we were kind of chasing some views on stories and talking about stuff because they were popular, when neither of us were really that kind of bought into, and actually brought a little bit of stress of looking into them. And we thought, actually, we don't want to go down that path. We want to talk about stuff that genuinely interests us. And sport was something at the time. And we thought, you know what? This is a lot more fun. It's easygoing, lighthearted. Let's just do sport. And then we started doing sport. And now we want to talk about other stuff. We want to talk about non-sport stuff too. So we're going to have our cake and eat it.
Yes. So we have, this channel will still be, and we made the decision to create Bearded Sports because there was such a divergence of subscribers. And interestingly, our sports subscribers and our Bearded Philosophy subscribers, this channel, have the same number of subs now. And those people that subscribe to us for very different reasons. So this channel will maintain, will stay as just more, I think, more current events, but it's more current events. It's more us talking about things within those stories that are interesting, not necessarily current events, but we just wanted to tackle conversations and questions that weren't necessarily linked to who's knocking whom out.
More debate and philosophy-based discussions rather than, the latest kind of grilling in the media, the latest gotcha.
Yes. And for those of you who just subscribed, we had a few subscribers after we did our first reviews. And if you're watching this and you're wondering about the reviews, there will be a new channel. I'm going to put a link up here. It's Speakeasy Reviews. So Andrew and I will still be doing our reviews in the collective basement and garage of our houses. And coming up this week, we are reviewing Back to the Future, the series. So do tune in for that. But we're coming back to us, Hugh. So that is the last you'll hear of Speakeasy Reviews until the next show when I plug it.
Love it. Love the name and love the logo, Shauna.
Yeah, thank you. I worked hard on that one. And then soon enough, there's going to be this week. I have decided. I was debating on this. There is going to be a bearded golf video. Nick's going to help me film it, and I'm just going to splice it together. So there will be a golf video, which I'm going to plug as well. And then you have some interesting stuff that you're doing on the side as well. So make sure that you do bring that to the table so we can get people to shuttle down there and learn how to make themselves successful.
100%. Yeah. So what we got today, Shauna?
So we being divas decided we were going to talk about, both of us wanted to talk about Harry and Meghan, and Harry and Meghan. And the main issue, and I think this was something that I wanted to bring to the table as much as you, was the Harry and Meghan, the explosive interview with Oprah, and is it actually worth paying attention to? And I think it's fair to say you and I didn't watch the whole interview, but I wanted to have a grander talk about the royal family. Yeah. Because as an American, we're very intrigued by the royal family. It's not something we have. And with this whole Harry and Meghan thing, the dirty laundry of the royals out in public, to me, it seems like it's not a negative or a positive. It's almost like a cottage industry anymore. I mean, what are your views on the royal family?
Yeah, a very big question. Because I've got some kind of mixed views across the bag, really, Shauno. So what do I think of them? Overall, my opinion has been based on ignoring media as much as possible, bit of history at school, and primarily The Crown, the wonderful Netflix series, which has really actually helped me get more interested in the background of what it's all about and what it means to be a royal, and some of the rules and that type of stuff. And overwhelmingly, what came through from watching that series was, oh my God, I'm just so glad I'm not a royal. They have this privilege, as we now call it, with instant money. They've got all the, they've got all this kind of choice in many ways, the world at their feet. But they have the they have fame. They have instant fame the moment that they're born. And for me, it's like that's a curse. So really, for happiness, you want enough money not to worry about money, but you don't ever want to chase fame, because it's just there are very few people that survive that well. So I ultimately, believe it or not, might be unpopular, but I feel sorry for them, and I would hate to be a royal. And I am actually quite happy that Meghan and Harry have kind of jumped ship, and I wish them all the best. The royal family more as a whole, what do I kind of think of them? Well, you know, they were created, you know, almost a number of centuries ago, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And I think what they stood for and the reasons that they were created, like back in the day, are very different to what they are now. And unfortunately, some of the rules that they have in place are very antiquated and out of date. And I think they really do need revising. From a personal standpoint, I don't have any animal. I know some people really dislike the rules, and I know some people are like vermin, like loyalists, and the rules cannot do wrong. And I'm somewhere in the middle of that, where I personally feel that it's not healthy for them as human beings or for us or as a society to worship and put people on a pedestal. And I think the royal family is probably the biggest of all pedestals, maybe arguably globally, maybe. So I don't think it's healthy for anyone to be in that kind of privileged position. So yeah, I would say that probably wraps it up. I think that I was going to say a point about the kind of finances side of things, Sean, and we spoke before coming live.
About this before, yeah.
My thoughts generally are that although I know that they bring in, or I'm being made aware by Sean, that they bring in a lot of tourism to our country. Undoubtedly, I mean, I think that's quite obvious. You know, Buckingham Palace alone and all the buildings that they have, they do raise revenue for this country. I just don't think it's a good idea for them that there is a link between the taxpayers and them receiving money from us, because they're somewhat, therefore, then behold, we own them. We're paying from, we own this part of the world, and therefore we are entitled to know everything that happens about them. Therefore, the media are totally just to, you know, escape any kind of freedoms they have and encroach into their life and tell us what's going on, any gossip stuff going on. So I think that for their own welfare, it would make more sense if they were self-sustained through their tourism or through whatever means they have with property, and they were self-funded, so they kind of can cut that cord of the general public feeling they have something over them. But a very deep topic, great question. One I'm excited into and to hear your thoughts on as well, mate.
Yeah, well, I actually looked up the value, or how much the taxpayers paying them, and it's surprisingly little in my view. As far as I almost feel like they should be asking for more from the government. It's 67 million, I think, in 2019 is what they received from the taxpayer. And I think when you look at, I don't disagree with you, because I think there's pieces where yes, you know, the police are paying for their security, and you know, you look at the wedding, which I think you and I both watched the wedding. We actually took time out of our days to watch the royals' wedding.
I enjoyed it.
I did too. It's something that, and my wife and I we're not royal followers. We're not, you know, big fans. I think my view on the royal family is I think it's living history. And the one thing that makes this country unique is you have these elements of living history. And it's not just with the royals. I mean, you have, you know, organizations like the National Trust, which are supported by the royal family. And you have, you know, these buildings and, you know, the Tower of London. You have all of this history in London, and not just in London, in England and in the United Kingdom, that's kept alive in sort of, you know, memorand. I don't know. I'm trying to use multisyllabic words. It's not working out. But you have these, you know, Britain is really good at keeping these sort of institutions alive. And I think it's important, you know, for the identity of the country. But, you know, there is an element that I wholeheartedly agree where this lifestyle is not healthy for people. And I think a good example of this, and I didn't mention this before, if you look at sort of like a real shitty version of the royal family, you look at the Trumps, and you look at, let's say, Don Jr., and you look at his children compared to William and Harry, and there is a bit of a gulf in how America does shitty royalty to how William and Harry are. But it's a real shitty existence to live and grow up in. So I'm happy that they're getting money, but I think there's a piece here where the British media are the ones that really sort of exacerbate this whole relationship with the royals. You have these, commentators who do nothing but follow the royal family, and all they are gossip queens. Really, at the end of the day, gossip kings and gossip queens that make money on just saying shit about the royals. And there was an interesting part in the interview, which we're going to be talking about, where Harry mentioned that there's a relationship with the media and the royal family where you try to keep, you try to give them information so that they tell good stories about you. And that is such a parasitic, toxic relationship that's not going to lead, at all well. And that very much, I think, propagated this story that I'm not. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I heard it. I don't know what your views are on the story, just to transition into that, the interview with Oprah. It wasn't the bombshell interview that I didn't look at it as a bombshell interview, really. I think there's things in there that I kind of expected that really sucked. There's elements of that story that, we've only heard one side of the story, so I can't necessarily say, yeah, Royals bad, Harry, Meghan good. I mean, what were your takeaways from it?
Yeah, so I think this is where our reactions are probably slightly different, in that I was more shocked with what I was hearing, and probably more on the side of more concerned about what I was hearing, when I think you're right in that, we're only hearing one side of the story here. Like, we haven't heard from the Royals came out with a statement. I suppose that's maybe my concern where I'm coming from, is I just don't think it'll ever get raised or anything will be done about it. Whatever is brought up, it's kind of, there's a feel of it being washed under the carpet with Royals. Some of their bombshell moments, for example, just to raise a view, because not everyone might have seen it, but you've got Meghan admitting that a senior member of the royal family stated they were concerned about the color of the skin of their baby, and they were also running through the idea that they were not going to support them from a security standpoint, this child, and potentially linking those things together. There were concerns about her welfare. She was really struggling, kind of being locked up in this place, not having her freedoms and having some real mental health concerns, and not really being shown any support from the royal HR. And I think just hearing a lot of this stuff, I couldn't help but feel like I just really hope that this stuff, I mean, it just sounds horrendous. What is going to be done about this? What is going to be the follow-up? And on Gogglebox, which is where I saw the whole interview took place, I didn't realize before that, they actually followed, I think it was the next night on news, they had a statement follow, which is just like a one paragraph. They're looking, a very mere response. Like, we're looking into it. We're so sorry it's been like that. We'll make sure we're here to support, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't really, there wasn't much acceptance, apologies, or, it didn't really set the world alight. But
it was a good corporate response.
It was a corporate response, was exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And it's what made me, do you know what, so this is it really, Sean, from the interview, I was more concerned about what Harry was saying rather than Meghan, because Harry's coming at it from a more balanced perspective. He talked about his relationship with the Queen, his granny, and that's really strong. He talked about his relationship with his brother, who's going to be the future King of England, who, they've had some difficulties, but, he loves him and they're still close.
Tight with him, yeah.
Still tight with him. And he was just disappointed with how his dad has reacted, Prince Charles, in some of the situation. Again, not expanding on that, we don't know what that means. So he still has a vested interest in the royal family, whilst Meghan could essentially cut her life off from it, and she could kind of get on with it. She isn't impacted as much to the degree that Harry is, because the reason that anyone knows Harry and who he is, and that he got with Meghan in the first place, is because he is a royal and he comes from that background. So hearing his approach and his disappointment with the lack of support shown to them as a family, to Meghan, his wife, and to the future child, was really disappointing, to the extent that he was prepared to leave that behind. So that it was sad to hear that, and I felt like more compelled to hear that side of it, because I felt it was coming from a more balanced perspective. But you correctly pulled me up on the fact that, hey, there are two sides to every story, and we haven't really heard that other side yet.
That's where we had a mini, not a debate about this, but well, there's a few things. The first one I want to raise that I think, yeah, it is a bombshell, but I don't think it's a surprise. And that is, if I can paraphrase the story about, somebody in the palace asking about the color of the baby, I can paraphrase that from an American standpoint and say, old white guy worried about color of grandchild. That's like not a shocking story when you talk about old white people and their tendencies for racism. Am I shocked that, let's say, if you were to say to me, Prince Charles, he is a closet, I wouldn't say racist, I don't want to use that term, but he's got prejudices and he would have concerns about the color of a baby, that wouldn't be shocking to me, but it would still be a bombshell, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't be like, holy shit, old white guy and royalty is not fully inclusive. Whoa, that wouldn't shock me necessarily.
I hear what you're saying. I think if it, I'm not surprised by that, but the fact they've actually just owned it and supposedly, again, allegedly said that to her, admitted that to her, is pretty insane for me. Like, yeah, to actually to go behind your closed doors and speak your slurs or whatever it is, your biased views on something, fair enough, but to disclose racist views in front of someone who it directly impacts, I was quite surprised with. And I think that my concern from that front, I say concern, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I just think that the royal family have tried to do what they can to move with the times, because times are changing.
Yeah.
But if this is to be true, or even mostly true, then it's very concerning from a mental health point of view and also from a race point of view, how big those two are in the news right now. Yeah. That arguably the most famous family in the whole of the world, the most prestigious family in the whole of the world, at least up there in the consideration, is showing distinct lack of care in two major topics going through our society at the moment across the globe, not just in the UK. Like these are massive global issues. Who there have been charity works and stuff done to try and, there's a lot of effort to try and raise the profile of this. And it just seemed, or it came across from that one-sided view that they're well out of sync with it. So yeah, we don't know how true it is, but you can just speculate on that. And if it is true, or even partially true, or mostly true, then it's concerning that we're not moving away from that.
Yeah,
and that they're given that much space and time, considering they have those views.
And I think I look at it this way: is it possible from what we've heard that somebody said, just sort of off the cuff, let's say it's Prince Charles, well, I wonder if the baby's going to be black. That would be interesting. That would be our first black prince in this family, which is not in isolation, is just a statement. Oh, that would be interesting. Somebody heard that and passed that on through one of the handlers of Harry and Meghan. Is that a feasible scenario? Yeah, it's feasible. It's definitely feasible. Is it also feasible that somebody was worried about the skin color of their baby? Yes, that's feasible. So I think it's something that there's awareness on it. I think I'm happy that it's been brought to the forefront to a certain degree, but I just really find it difficult only hearing the one side of the story. I can imagine there's a lot of scenarios where whisper down the lane didn't really portray the message that was sent clearly, and I don't want to point fingers and say racist through something somebody else heard in a very stressful situation. Somebody's dealing with mental health issues quite clearly.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. Is it possible? Of course it is. And like you said, is it possible that someone just blatantly just said to her that this is a real concern about the color of the skin of your baby? That's possible too.
Yeah.
And they're vastly different as far as our levels of concern of which one it being true, from one being, well, actually, if it was more hearsay or exaggerated or just, I wonder, like out of curiosity, a comment versus a genuine concern that it could be a certain color. Yeah. Like they both could be true and both very different outcomes, to follow up with. But the truth is, I don't think anyone will ever know. And Harry, Oprah jumped straight on it, wasn't she? And who said that? Like she was like straight on it, and I was like, there's no way they're going to say it. And Harry was like, I will never ever say that. So that was the response I was expecting.
I think that response makes to me it more compelling that there may have been some serious
That it was
concern.
bad. That's
That it was
exactly what
bad.
I thought, mate. That's exactly
And
what. Yes.
I think I'm being overly. The reason I'm overly cautious in sort of taking a strong position, and part of that is I am a bit wishy-washy when it comes to taking a stand on anything, because I've been wrong so many times in my life. And when we look at situations like this, we look at any situation, you know, especially this is going to be a bit of a leap, but we look at, you know, let's say sexual harassment claims. So in America, the governor of New York is getting multiple claims of sexual harassment. Is it possible to respect the accuser, but also respect the accusee? I 100% think it's very possible to respect both. And that's sort of the path I'm taking, because we haven't really, the statements that the palace have come out with, the corporate statements, have not been, I know from working in a similar environment where I'm responsible for making statements for my company when we make mistakes. The best path when you've made a mistake, and it's obvious you've made a mistake, is to admit it, hold your hands up, and talk about how you're going to change. And I think everybody can forgive you and move on if you can accept that and take steps to make it better. But in this instance, we didn't see that. And, you know, as much as it was a affirmation that they still support, quote, Harry and Meghan, it was also an affirmation that they're not accepting responsibility for this at the same time, which is a statement in itself. The not saying something was saying something.
Yeah, I'm just trying to Google it to see if I could get this statement, but I don't know if I'm going to get it in time. Yeah, that's how I feel listening to you, is that I think in this case you're being too wishy-washy, and based on what I heard. So what I heard was more compelling and concerning stuff. But what I will say is I think that many more of us, and myself included, need to think more like Sean in general. As like a default setting, we need to come from that base, that we do need to hear the other side of the story. Just in this case, there was an opportunity for them to do that and to release a statement, and it was very corporate and very I don't know. It didn't move the needle for me. It didn't really seem like anything was. How would I feel if those accusations were true? If Meghan and Harry are 100% true, how would I feel in their position? I'd be really disappointed with their response. Oh, so that's it.
Yeah. So the following statement is issued by Buckingham statement. Oh, it's not showing the whole thing.
Been silent to learn about the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been.
Let me, because I have it here. Let me actually bring it up here. So the following statement is issued by Buckingham Palace on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen. The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately. Harry, Meghan, and Archie will always be much loved family members. And I think the one of the things that stood out to me when, you know, we go through this process, and what stood out to me, the reason I kind of looked at this story at the end, I was kind of like, was the actual issues raised. You know, Harry was very clear that, as you mentioned, I got the impression that both were very, if anything, I thought this whole experience affirmed the quality of character the Queen has to a degree, because at no point was she, you know, whilst it's her organization and she's responsible for it, they did kind of go out of their way to say, we have a good relationship with her. We respect her. We love this person. And even Harry with his brother, it seems like a lot of the insinuations were set at either the foot of the palace as an organization, or Prince Charles, and that's sort of an insinuation or assumption people are making. I don't know enough about that, but it seems like those characters, the main players, William and Queen Elizabeth, are in some ways not necessarily in the focus of Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, I think that was very clear. And they said, "How is your relationship with your father?" Oprah asked, and there was a long pause, followed by, "I've just, you know, I've been disappointed." So we don't know to what extent that is, and then that becomes assumption, and we're jumping into things. So then, when this accusation comes out, I think people are putting 2 and 2 and making 8 with it, and no one will know apart from those involved. And by the signs of that statement, I don't think anyone will be finding that out.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I do understand from Harry and Meghan's point of view, which maybe this is why they took the interview outside of making certain things known. And this when I went into this, I didn't understand the motivation outside of, I know that they made something like $7 million doing this interview. I didn't know of all the issues with race with mental health. And I know that we talked very briefly about, who Meghan's point on nobody cared about her mental health issues. Even that, like from just that one side of the story, it's difficult to know the series of events that led up to that, because I can't really necessarily say that, it's such an obvious thing anymore to say I'm having these issues, I'm depressed, and somebody goes, yeah, that's not my department. There's a lot of unknown in that story, but I think when you look at the story itself, because there wasn't any issue that was raised with the palace, did they feel it was upon them to say, this isn't as good as you think it is and we want to take down this institution? Or was it, we've been cut off and we need to make some money somehow? I don't understand, because are there tabloid stories out about this that salate them? Because I didn't find them to be portrayed negatively in the media anyway.
Oh, Meghan's getting beasted in the press. So she's had a hard time from day one, and I think that's where a lot of this was coming from, because I believe Diana had a lot of scrutiny initially, like prior to her death. A lot of the royals kind of come in for that, and I think especially those that are married in really kind of hit the press hard, because they've got they've won the lottery or something, and the press is out to kind of, rather than it being all victorious, they want to try and find the negativity in it. So from Meghan's point of view, she's coming from a mixed race background, which raised flags. She's divorced, so that raised, from a mixed race divorcee you think, well, he gives two shits about that. But watching The Crown, it made me realize again, I don't know how true that is, but it appears that there's a very big deal about who you're married to the extent that Charles supposedly didn't want to be with Diana. That was a backup. He wanted someone else, but because of the marriage, she was with someone else, that was a no-go. She wasn't ticked off the list. She didn't meet their criteria, therefore they weren't able to go ahead with it. So she kind of came in with this scrutiny, arguably, I'd say very unfair social scrutiny, but from a royal point of view, real concerns. And I think they've just been particularly hard on her. But by the sounds of it, I think she's probably had the treatment that a lot of people have in that situation, in the royal situation. So she, by the sounds of it, my take, wanted to tell her side of the story to kind of straighten some things out.
Yeah. And I can understand from Harry and Meghan's point of view, the whole cutting them off is a strange one.
Can I say one thing, Sean? Sorry to cut you off, but I felt like what was coming through as one of the biggest points in this, which I think is relevant, is that Meghan made Harry leave. I think that was like, there's this thing that, she's selfish, she's an actress, she's putting on a show, she's coming over, and this was her plan all along. And I think that there's like a lot of undercut in there, and that supposedly, according to both of them on Oprah, was absolutely not the case. So I think they wanted to set the record straight on that point, as well as a few other things. So sorry, that just came to mind.
No, I don't think there was anything about Harry's behavior that told me, and I said this to you the other day when we were prepping for this, I don't think there's been anything in Harry's behavior since, he's come into the spotlight as an adult, as a man, that lends me to believe he wanted to be in that lifestyle ever.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he put up with it, and I don't think it was as I think the most difficult thing about leaving was he probably felt like he was given a decision to live this shitty life that he doesn't like, or be cut off. And I think that's problematic when you have a family to take care of. Now, granted, he probably, I don't know what his net worth is with his inheritance from his mother. It's probably quite substantial. That's neither here nor there, because you can't necessarily sit on that nest egg and hope it's going to do everything you need it to do, especially if you're, he's going to have a big house with a lot of separation from people, and he's got children. And I think that, being cut off, it's like, well, you've brought me into this situation. I just, like everybody else, want freedom to not move forward with the family business. And now you're taking money away from me because I just want to do something different. And there is something strange about that decision. I don't think they're that broke that they couldn't, chuck a few mil their way for security or something at the very least. So I think that I can understand them even taking that interview out of spite. And not spite, that's not the right word, but taking that interview with a little bit more gusto because of the fact that they were cut off. This is your family. I couldn't think, if my parents had the money, that sort of money, I couldn't see them doing that to me. So I can see that being very strange. And especially given he wants to still have a relationship. And I'm sure even, Meghan and Harry want to have a good relationship with their immediate relatives. So it's got to be very difficult for him.
Yeah, very, very difficult. Again, I think there's a few points to kind of unpack there, because so from the money perspective, if they wanted to leave the royal society and do their own thing and just be Meghan and Harry, then in many ways you say, well, that's fair enough. If you want to go ahead and do that, go ahead, but you're not going to get anything from us because this is our business. You want to leave the business, but without contributing anything, so we're not going to pay you for it. And you're like, well, that makes total sense. But what they were suggesting prior to when they were in the Royal Society was that we're not going to be funding the security side of it for your son because of there are things we're unhappy with, potentially skin color. We're not going to be offering security, which was like, what the is going on here? This isn't right. And that's what kind of made them want to then leave. So for not having the money whilst they were in there, when anyone else in any other situation, like William's got the support, their kids have got the support, everyone else is getting support. Why? I mean, that's one of the most straightforward answers that you'd want from them is why aren't they going to be supported? There's nothing coming back from that. And that would be enough to want to leave, I think, in my point of view anyway. And if they were to leave, then fair enough if you want to cut the cord. From a money perspective on the Oprah thing, Sean, look, from his perspective, he said, as long as I have enough money to keep my family secure, then that's all I need. And we need security permanently because who he is. And you think, okay, I would have zero concept of what that's like. And I could fully support him doing that. And if you could make $7 million from Oprah and that gets you covered for a few years worth of, however long it is for his security, because it won't be bloody cheap. Then, you go for it, mate. If people want to tune in and do that, I have any issue. He can have an Oprah interview every week. I couldn't care less, really. I'm not going to tune into them all, but that's on him. So those are just some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you raise it well, because I think it's more complex than them just not doing work. I think that there's a duty of care to your family, piece of it. And, Harry could even make a case that he's got residuals coming to him from all the work he's done from the age of 1, for every picture that's been taken of him as a baby, for every interview he's done.
Who knows?
To cut him off, I think even from a business perspective, you think about it from the perspective of an actor who, your films, you may have fallen out with the producer, but you're still contracted to make money every time somebody shows that film. You're still part of that brand, even if you say you're cut off. And there's historical work you've done that has a knock-on effect to today. So there's definitely a business case. It's a wonder he's not suing the royal family for money. And maybe he should be commended for not going down that route. Although maybe he doesn't have to with the interviews and book deals he could probably sign.
Again, I get a sense, I don't know the bloke, but I just get a sense that there's real love, and I just don't think that's in his character.
No.
I think it would have to be something very severe for him to do that. Can't speak for Meghan, but from Harry, I'm in full agreement with you, mate, is that I don't think he really wanted to leave, felt kind of forced to because of situations that he just could not stand by and accept. But he seems probably the most transparent royal we've had. That's been born into it, not someone that's kind of been married into it. He just seems, I think we see more of who he is than any other royal, including his brother. I think William is ultra professional, and I don't really know who he is at his core. He's the future king of England, and he acts so. He acts in accordance, very much like Elizabeth, just the true professional, who they need to be. But Harry, I think he's more of like the people's prince. Like we kind of, he's just like a real guy. Like he making mistakes, messing around, drinking, doing a bit of drugs, and naughty stuff, and so I think there's a bit more relatability to him.
And I want to just to make sure that anybody listening to this, I have no problem with Meghan, and I fully support. She has valid concerns. My only, not criticism, my only position is I don't know enough about both sides to necessarily champion everything she's saying, but I fully support. I fully support her ability to be able to speak out. And I think if, she has some issues with mental health, as we all do. And I think it's a good thing that she's, publicly voicing it, because there's other people in similar positions, not necessarily the same as hers, but who are in positions where they feel they're stuck. And I think her speaking out's a good thing, and I fully support her path. And you know, I think they should be supported by the royal family. I have no problem with that. So I'm not, you know, I'm not one of those people that's trashing Meghan. And I think for me, as you said, I am painfully middle of the road, almost to a fault.